Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling source material on someone whose career is, well, it's almost hard to pin down, just incredibly diverse.
Yeah, we're talking about Ben Sidran. And it's not just, dabbling in different things. It's deep, recognized achievement across fields that don't usually mix.
Right, we're talking rock music, serious jazz, academia, writing, broadcasting, producing.
It's a lot. The mission today is figuring out how one person weaves all those threads, rock and roll history, jazz scholarship, English lit, TV production into one cohesive and frankly long career.
And the hook, I think, comes right from the Chicago Sun-Times. They called him a Renaissance man cast adrift in a modern world. That image, it really sticks.
It does. It perfectly frames our dives. The Renaissance ideal is about the whole person, the polymath. Sidran seems to have taken that idea and just plunged it right into the heart of modern American music.
So we need to connect those dots for you. How does studying English literature deeply connect to, say, producing Van Morrison? Or playing keyboards for the Rolling Stones?
Exactly. And what can you, the listener, take away from a life that seems to defy specialization?
Okay, let's lay the groundwork. Ben Hirsch Sidran, born August 14th, 1943 in Chicago, grew up in Racine, Wisconsin.
Known primarily maybe as a keyboardist and vocalist in the jazz world, but also a major producer, label owner, writer.
And we should mention a legacy continues. His son, Leo Sidran, is a Grammy-nominated musician himself. It's clearly in the blood.
Our sources cover, 6 decades? From the early 60s right up to releases this year? It's a massive amount of output.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Wisconsin University. This is where that split, or maybe that fusion, really begins.
Okay, so he's in Racine, Wisconsin. Then 1961, he heads to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And this is key. He co-founds a band there, the Ardells.
And his bandmates in the Ardell. Only Steve Miller and Boz Scaggs. I mean, talk about a starting lineup.
Right. Future rock royalty. But here's the first really interesting turn. Miller and Skaggs take off for the West Coast, chasing the music dream.
But Sidran doesn't go.
He stays. He finishes his degree in English literature, graduating in '66.
That's a significant choice right there, choosing academia over the immediate pull of rock stardom with guys who clearly had something going on.
It really is. And you have to think, that English lit background, it's about analysis, critical thinking, understanding narrative, communicating complex ideas. These aren't just academic skills, they're life skills.
Skills that presumably shaped everything else he did, from writing books to interviewing musicians.
Absolutely. He learned how to deconstruct a text. Later, he applies that to music, to culture, to the music business itself.
Okay, so he graduates in '66. Does he then follow Miller and Skaggs west? No. He goes east, way east.
Right, across the Atlantic. He enrolls at the University of Sussex in England to pursue a PhD.
So you picture him buried in books, right? Deep academic dive.
And he was studying. But simultaneously, the sources are clear. He's working as a session musician in London during the absolute explosion of the British rock scene.
That juxtaposition is just wild. Studying dense academic theory by day, and then, what? Heading into the studio.
Pretty much. Think about the mental gear shift required.
Who was he playing with? The sources mention some huge names.
Yeah, legendary figures. Eric Clapton, Peter Frampton. And get this, he was involved in sessions connected to the Rolling Stones, working directly with Charlie Watts.
While studying for a PhD in England.
While studying for a PhD. It's not just jamming either. This is professional, high-stakes studio work. It shows that ability he has to just switch contexts, to operate at a high level in completely different worlds. One intensely intellectual, the other
instinctive. Collaborative, high pressure in a different way.
Exactly. Session work demands you listen intently, you collaborate instantly, you nail the part now. Playing with Clapton requires one kind of feel, one kind of musical vocabulary. Playing with the Stones requires another, that swagger, that groove. It's about feel as much as notes.
So he's juggling the long-term analytical thinking of a PhD with the immediate intuitive demands of top-tier rock sessions.
And apparently thriving in both. The sources don't suggest he saw it as an etherer. More like complementary skill sets. Academia sharpens the mind, the analysis. Music demands presence, connection, instant application.
Okay, so even with the PhD studies and the London session scene, that original connection to Steve Miller didn't just fade away.
No, not at all. It remained really strong, even across the ocean. Sidran becomes a key contributor to the Steve Miller Band during a really fertile period.
Which albums are we talking about?
He's listed as keyboardist and songwriter on Brave New World, Your Saving Grace, #5, and Recall the Beginning, A Journey from Eden. These are, pretty foundational albums for Miller.
And the big one, the track everyone knows, even if they don't know Sidran's name, Space Cowboy. He co-wrote that.
He did. That credit alone cements his place in rock history, completely separate from everything else he achieved in jazz or academia. It's a classic rock anthem.
And his involvement went beyond just playing and writing, right? He stepped into producing for Miller, too.
Yeah, he produced the 1972 album Recall the Beginning. That's another significant step, moving from being a musician in the band to shaping the overall sound, the direction of the entire project.
It shows that early interest in the bigger picture, beyond just his own performance, learning the ropes of production.
Definitely. Acquiring those skills, understanding how to guide an artist's vision, how to manage the studio process, skills he'd later use extensively, and even teach.
And it's interesting how that relationship came full circle later on.
Right. Much later, in 1988, Sidran produces Miller's album Born to Be Blue.
Which was Miller doing jazz standards, moving closer to Sidran's own turf.
Exactly. So the dynamic shifted. Instead of Sidran contributing keyboards to Miller's rock vision, now Sidran is the expert guide, helping Miller navigate the nuances of jazz and blues performance. It's a lovely symmetry.
It really underscores that fluidity between genres. Okay, so that sets up his early foundation, the academic grounding, the rock credentials. Let's move into the phase where he really establishes himself as a solo artist and, crucially, a sought-after producer.
So 1971, he makes a key move. He returns to Madison, Wisconsin. And this becomes his home base, his anchor, really, for most of his life.
Which is interesting in itself. After London, the Stones' California connections, he chooses the Midwest.
Yeah. And it's there he starts to formalize the academic side related to the industry itself. He starts teaching courses at UW-Madison.
Teaching what specifically? Not English lit this time.
No, teaching courses on the business of music.
Okay, now that's a perfect synthesis of his experiences. What kind of insights would he bring to that, having navigated sessions, royalties for Space Cowboy production?
Exactly. He wasn't teaching theory out of a textbook. He was teaching the practical realities. Contract negotiations from a player's perspective, royalty splits from a songwriter's perspective, the studio dynamics, the budgets, the label politics he learned firsthand producing Recall the Beginning.
So, dealing with intellectual property, navigating labels, things learned under fire with Clacton or Miller now being taught in a classroom.
Precisely. Knowing how fast you need to work when the clock is ticking on studio time with someone like Charlie Watts, that's a fundamental business lesson about efficiency and value. He lived it.
Okay, beyond teaching, his reputation as a producer really takes off in this period.
Yeah.
And the list of artists he produced, it's staggering in its variety.
It really is the definition of versatility. The sources confirm productions for, okay, get this list, Mose Allison.
The wry, bluesy jazz philosopher. Okay.
Horizon.
The intense, mystical, famously demanding rock poet. All right.
Ricky Lee Jones.
Quirky, narrative, highly unique singer-songwriter.
Wow. And Diana Ross.
Diana Ross. The Motown legend, the epitome of polished pop and R&B sophistication. That range is nuts.
It really is. Think about the different approaches needed. Producing Mose Allison is probably about capturing intimacy, subtlety, that unique vocal phrasing, maybe a minimalist approach.
Yeah, you want it to feel authentic, close-up.
Whereas producing Diana Ross, especially in her later career, you're likely dealing with much bigger productions, complex arrangements, aiming for that glossy commercial sound for pop radio. R&B rhythm sections, possibly string arrangements, background vocals.
Totally different sonic worlds, different technical demands, different artistic temperaments to manage.
Completely. The fact that all these artists with such distinct identities and presumably high standards trusted him to realize their vision. It says so much about his skill.
It suggests he wasn't imposing a Ben Sidran sound, but acting as a facilitator, a translator, maybe.
That's a great way to put it. He had the musical vocabulary, the technical chops, and maybe the intellectual empathy to understand what each artist needed and help them achieve it. Very few producers have that breadth.
So while he's helping shape the sound of others, he's also building his own very substantial solo discography.
Oh yeah, incredibly prolific. Over 35 solo albums. That's remarkable longevity and consistency, starting way back in 1970 with Feel Your Groove and going right up to Rainmaker, released in 2024.
50-plus years of solo records.
And importantly, to maintain control over that output, especially his unique style, he moves into label ownership. He starts his own labels, Nardas and Go Jazz.
Why was that necessary? Was it just about creative freedom, or were major labels not interested in his specific blend?
It seems mostly about creative control. Major labels often want to put artists in a neat box. And Sidran's music deliberately blends jazz, pop sensibilities, and this intellectual spoken word commentary. That's hard to market easily.
Right, not easily categorized.
So Nardis and Go Jazz gave him the freedom to follow his muse. He could do an album reinterpreting Bob Dylan through a jazz lens, like Dylan Different in 2009, or something more politically charged like Swing State in 2022. The labels were crucial for letting him be, well, himself, letting that existential side breathe.
Okay, let's dig into that phrase, because the Times called him the first existential jazz rapper. It's such a unique description. What does it actually mean in terms of his performance style?
It's such a brilliant encapsulation, actually. Let's break it down. Jazz is the foundation. The sophisticated harmonies, the improvisation, the often cool syncopated rhythms from his band.
Okay, the musical bed.
Right. Then rapper. Now, this isn't like commercial hip-hop. It refers to his vocal delivery. It's often spoken word, rhythmic, conversational, sometimes almost a stream of consciousness flow over the music. He uses his voice for commentary, not just traditional singing.
So rhythmic speech rather than melody sometimes.
Often, yeah. And then the existential part. This ties right back to his literary and philosophical interests. Existentialism deals with themes of existence, freedom, choice, meaning, absurdity in modern life.
And his lyrics tackle those kinds of themes.
Directly. He'll comment on social trends, the irony of technology, the search for authenticity, philosophical questions,
Yeah.
all delivered with this cool, detached, almost conversational tone, but rhythmically locked in with the band.
So it's like the analytical brain from his PhD is providing the lyrical content, and the seasoned musician is delivering it within a sophisticated jazz framework.
Precisely. It's the perfect synthesis. He's using the bandstand almost like a forum for ideas, but making it groove. It makes that English Lit degree seem just as vital to his music as his keyboard skills. He's fundamentally a commentator using music as his medium.
That focus on commentary, on explaining things, seems like a natural bridge to the next major phase of his career, using media to demystify music, especially jazz.
Absolutely. His broadcasting work is just as significant in many ways as his recordings. He became a really important voice in bringing jazz to a wider audience, making it accessible without dumbing it down.
Starting with radio, right? NPR.
Yeah, beginning in 1981, he hosted jazz programs for National Public Radio. The most famous was probably the Jazz Alive series.
And Jazz Alive won a Peabody Award. That's, the highest honor in broadcasting. What made that show resonate so much?
Well, Sidran wasn't just a DJ playing records. He was an insider. He knew the musicians, he understood the music deeply, but he could explain it. He framed the music within its cultural history, interviewed the artist, talked about the structures in a way that listeners could grasp.
Making it less intimidating.
Exactly. High-level stuff, but presented conversationally, without jargon or pretension. Perfect for anyone curious about jazz, but maybe put off by its complexity. He was translating.
And he took that skill to television, too, VH1, which is interesting. That's a mainstream pop and rock channel.
Right. In the early 90s, he hosted a series called New Visions on VH1, and that won an ACE Award, which was the big cable award back then.
So he's putting jazz and related music right in front of a huge mainstream audience. What was his goal there?
He often talked about wanting to demystify the world of jazz. That was his mission statement, really.
Demystify how? What was the philosophy behind that?
He had this great quote, "Jazz musicians are just like the rest of us, only more so." Unpack that a bit. I think he meant that the things jazz musicians do, improvising, communicating complex emotions, collaborating intensely, taking risks, these aren't alien activities. They're heightened versions of things we all do or aspire to do. They just express it through a very sophisticated musical language. He wanted to show the human connection, not just the technical brilliance.
Acting as that bridge again, using his credibility as a musician and an intellectual to make it relatable.
Perfectly put. And that commitment to explaining, to preserving the context, led to probably his most ambitious project, the Talking Jazz Collection.
Which came out of his NTR interview show, Sidran on Record.
Exactly. Talking Jazz isn't just a collection of interviews, it's a major historical archive. It was released as this massive 24-CD box set.
24 CDs. Who was included?
60 jazz musicians, recorded over 5 years. We're talking legends. Dizzy Gillespie, Sonny Rollins, Art Blakey, and crucially, Miles Davis, capturing their voices, their perspectives in depth.
Why the emphasis on the speaking voice? We have transcripts of lots of interviews.
But the voice itself carries so much information that text loses. Tone, inflection, pauses, hesitations, emotion, personality. Think about Miles Davis, famously reserved, sometimes cryptic in print. Hearing him actually speak, the cadence, the attitude, it adds a whole different layer of understanding for historians, for listeners.
It makes the history feel more immediate, more human.
Totally. These recordings aren't just data, they're artifacts. They capture the sound of these creators reflecting on their own work and lives. It's invaluable primary source material.
And the set itself was designed to support that historical value, right?
Absolutely. It came with an 80-page booklet, essays, context, and importantly, classic photos by the great Lee Tanner. So you weren't just hearing the voices in isolation, you were getting the visual context, the critical analysis surrounding them. It was a really comprehensive, scholarly approach to presenting these conversations. Speaks volumes about his intellectual rigor.
That rigor, that dedication to context and history flows perfectly into the fourth pillar. Sidran, the author, the music historian.
Yeah, this is where that academic training really comes to the forefront again. His books aren't just memoirs. They're serious works of cultural history and sociology, applying those analytical skills directly to music.
Let's talk about his early book, Black Talk. What was the core idea there?
Black Talk, published back in '71, was pretty groundbreaking. Sidran argued that black musical forms, blues, jazz, gospel, R&B, weren't just entertainment. He saw them as complex systems of communication, deeply intertwined with the social and political realities of black life in America.
How so? Connecting musical elements to social experience.
Yes, he looked at things like improvisation, call and response patterns, rhythmic complexity, and argued they reflected specific cultural strategies for communication, expression, and even survival within a dominant, often oppressive white society. He treated the music itself as a vital social text.
That's a powerful way to look at it. Music is a language carrying coded social meaning. He also wrote his memoir, of course, A Life in the Music.
Right, detailing his own incredible journey. And the book version of Talking Jazz, collecting the interviews in print as well.
But the book that gained major academic recognition was There Was a Fire, Jews, Music, and the American Dream.
Yes, this was a major piece of cultural history. Really ambitious.
What was its focus? The Jewish contribution to American music.
Exactly. He explored the huge, often overlooked role that Jewish musicians, composers, songwriters, publishers, and producers played throughout the 20th century. He looked at how they often acted as crucial intermediaries, helping to shape, popularize, and bring black musical forms like jazz and blues into the wider American mainstream. Think Tin Pan Alley, Broadway, Hollywood, jazz clubs.
Exploring how their own experiences, immigration, assimilation, perhaps a tradition of textual interpretation influenced the music business and the sound itself.
Precisely. He dug into that complex cultural exchange, and the book got serious attention.
It was a finalist for the National Jewish Book Award in 2012. That's significant validation from outside the music world.
It absolutely is. It confirms his standing as a legitimate cultural historian, judged by scholarly standards. His analysis was taken seriously by the historical community, not just music fans.
And he even wrote a biography of a fellow music industry figure, right?
Yeah, The Ballad of Tommy LaPuma, about the legendary record producer. Which makes perfect sense.
Because Sidran himself was a producer, he understood that world intimately.
Exactly. Who better to write about a master producer than someone who's been in that chair, dealt with those pressures, made those kinds of creative and technical decisions with artists like Van Morrison or Diana Ross. He brought an insider's perspective to LaPuma's story.
So when you pull back and look at all four pillars, it all connects, doesn't it?
It really does seem to. The English Lit degree provides the analytical tools for the books and the insightful interviews. The session work provides the musical chops and the understanding for production. The production work informs the biography writing. And all of it somehow fuels that unique solo performance style.
The existential jazz rapper. It's like his whole career was the necessary background research for that persona.
You can almost see it that way. His life is the ultimate argument against narrow specialization. It shows how deep knowledge in one area, say, literary analysis, can cross-pollinate and enrich completely different fields. He really did embody that Renaissance ideal in a modern context.
Okay, let's wrap this up with a quick review of those four pillars just to underscore the sheer breadth we've discussed.
Pillar 1, rock sideman and session musician. You got the Ardells co-writing Space Cowboy, playing keys for Steve Miller, plus those crucial London sessions with Clapton, the Stone Circle, all while getting a PhD.
Pillar 2, the jazz innovator and solo artist. More than 35 albums, that distinctive vocal style, and taking control through his own labels, Nardas and Go Jazz.
Pillar 3, the master producer. Guiding artists across the spectrum, Mose Allison, Van Morrison, Ricky Lee Jones, Diana Ross. Incredible range.
And Pillar 4, the academic, broadcaster, and author. Peabody for NPR's Jazz Alive, ACE Award for VH1's New Visions, the Vital Talking Jazz Archive, and significant books like Black Talk and the award-nominated There Was a Fire.
So what's the takeaway for you, the listener? I think Sidran's life demonstrates that deep expertise doesn't have to live in a silo. That commitment he had to demystifying things suggests a core belief in education, in making connections.
It shows that the skills are transferable, maybe, that analytical thinking can apply to literature, music, business.
Exactly. He didn't just adapt to a fragmented world. He kind of forced it to accept his integrated vision. He built a career where all these different pursuits informed each other.
He created his own context where everything fit together.
Which leads us to our final thought for you to chew on. We talked a lot about how Sidran meticulously preserved the sound of jazz history, with the Talking Jazz box set specifically, the speaking voices, recognizing their unique value.
Right, the importance of audio as a primary source.
So think about today. We're drowning in digital content, countless interviews, podcasts, Zoom calls, Clubhouse rooms, TikTok videos, ephemeral audio and video capturing potentially historic conversations, creative processes, spontaneous thoughts.
Stuff that often disappears or gets lost in the noise.
Exactly. So the question is, are we archiving the essential voices of our own time, the actual sound of people talking, explaining, arguing, creating, with the same kind of care and intentionality that Sidran applied to those jazz legends? Or are we letting invaluable sonic history just evaporate? And what will that gap, that silence, cost future historians trying to understand us?
A lot to think about there. What voices are we losing right now? Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.